So we won. It was a huge day. Biggest win of my career. Biggest win for the Hendersons. Charlie Henderson sadly wasn't there because he's sick. 89 years old. His son, Don, who usually comes to every race and sort of runs the team, runs the Food Country USA business. He wasn't even there because he was hanging out with Charlie, of course. And Charlie, for the last 2 months, has texted me and said, I want to win Daytona. We're going to win Daytona. I want to win Daytona. We're going to win Daytona. All he's ever wanted to do for this is the 50th year that Henderson Motorsports has been in existence, and 50 years since they did their first NASCAR start. And so this was just a bucket list for him to go win Daytona. We did it. We won it. We go through the amazing celebration, get to look up at the sky and see World Center of Racing, which the whole time I was like, this isn't real. I did not just win Daytona. I can't believe this. We went through Victory Lane. We went to the media center. Chris was asked to come to the media center, my crew chief. He is the only full-time employee at Henderson Motorsports. And during this time, the truck went through tech, and this is where it gets interesting. So we exit the media center. We head back towards the garage. At that point, the Chevy PR person by the name of Dana, she got a call from Mike Ford from NASCAR, who informed us that our truck had actually not passed technical inspection, was too low and DQ'd, which I thought was a joke. And I asked him, are you joking? And it sounded like he said he was joking. And then he said I wouldn't joke about this. So that was a very, very horrible moment. So we ran back to the garage. We got there, and that's when we started to assess exactly what happened. And what this boiled down to is I'm going to talk about the pre-race tech inspection process for Heights, and then how this happens in post-race. So in pre-race,
hold on before you get there.
Go ahead. Yep.
Can I? I didn't know if you were wanting me to ask questions as we go or not.
You can get anytime.
So the first person to find out and associated with your association was a Chevy PR rep.
Yes, they got a call from Mike Ford.
NASCAR contacted the Chevy PR rep first.
Yes. Yep. That was the first person.
Okay. I mean, other than I suppose your team members that were with the truck at the time.
Yeah, with the truck. But at no time.
When you and the crew chief / general manager of the team made it back to the truck, you were essentially looking at a cold body of a truck that was.
We actually didn't even see the truck because at that point NASCAR then decided they were taking it to the technical center. So so
the truck had already been confiscated by NASCAR?
Yes.
Where was it?
I think they pushed it down to the Cup garage, if I remember correctly, by this time.
So you were. It's not like you came upon the scene of the crime.
No,
the truck had already been departed from inspection. Interesting. Okay.
Yep. So we arrive, got to speak to the series director for a second. There wasn't a lot of info, but basically DQ'd, and I was like, well, the crew chief wasn't there, and it's like which is another thing we'll find out. You don't need to have the crew chief there to go through tech. Which is something I will be requesting that NASCAR investigate that, because I think it's kind of crazy, especially on the smaller teams, to not have a person with authority there when a car is going through or truck is going through tech. Really is a tough, it's a tough thing to really swallow. So how does pre-race tech happen in Heights? All right, so you roll up to the Heights 6, which is on a measuring platform, and they put these sticks on the truck in the front, on the splitter,
for
the pre-race.
Center.
Yeah, in the pre-race. And they put it on the rear left of the spoiler and the right rear of the spoiler. You have to meet minimum ride height. So in the front, that's 6.5 inches. The rear, it's 47.3 on the right rear and 46.3 on the left rear. And when you go up there, you unhook the shocks, and then you can literally place the front end of these trucks because of the way the suspension is designed and the shocks and the geometry. You can place it anywhere you want. So when you go up on the height sticks pre-race, you have the shocks unhooked. They put on the height sticks, and if your front end is low, say, or high, you just push the front end down to be at 6.5 or lift it up to be at 6.5, and it will sit.
6.5 or 5.5?
6.5 pre-race.
Okay.
So, and then once you get through that, everything's fine. You go race, and then they give you a different tolerance in post-race. So in the post-race, you're allowed basically 47.06 on the right rear and 46.06 on the left rear, I think, or 47.46, something like that.
So you can be a little bit lower.
You can be a little lower. They're accounting for maybe a little damage, whatever. Adjustments, yeah, because everyone takes 2 rounds out because it's just what you do because you have that little tolerance. So everyone does that. This was the first time they had allowed you to do it before the race, but we didn't get that information, so we just did our 2 rounds in the race on that first pit stop, which is a common thing. You see it in Xfinity, you see it in trucks everywhere. Everyone just takes 2 rounds out. This is the first weekend they allowed you to do it before the race, actually, because they knew everyone just does it in the race, so they thought, why not just change it now? And for Xfinity is actually a big difference because that's when the car handles horribly that first run when you don't have those rounds out, and then they do that and the car kind of grips up and it becomes better. So when you get done with the race and you're going through tech, the first thing you'll do is the heights. And this is where it gets very muddy. They changed the post-race process back in February 2023 in a bulletin to the teams where you would be allowed to unhook the shocks, set and measure your front end to the level you wanted, which now in the post-race can be 5.5 inches on the front. So it's an inch. It can be an inch lower than pre-race, and you get a third of an inch in the rear of more tolerance there to be lower. But the difference to pre-race, which we've now discovered, is that when you set and measure the front end, then you can no longer touch it once it goes in the height sticks. So you just have to hope it's correct. And what happened with our team is that because Chris wasn't there and there was no person of authority, our mechanics have all said they were told to unhook the shocks and lift the front end up, which is not exactly the correct terminology. But
it's not the procedure.
It's not the procedure, but it's what
the procedure is the procedure, and I'm trying to be really specific here.
Yep.
So I understand this. The procedure is that you remove the shocks and you set and measure the height.
Correct.
The procedure is not to remove the shocks and lift the front.
Correct. That is what our crew guys remember being told. It's, we had 4 crew members who all validated that same statement from 2 different officials. So they did as directed, and once they let go of the truck, they were told you cannot touch it anymore.
Can I clarify one other difference between pre-race and post-race?
Mm-hmm.
So in pre-race, you can set and measure the front heights once you're up on the scales.
Yes.
Where in post-race, you have to do the set and measure before you get onto the scales. And then once you get onto the scales, it's sort of cross your fingers, make sure that, you hope you pass, right?
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And, the reason I pointed out when this changed was February 2023. Well, this team has not finished in the top 5 since that change. They've never experienced this post-race form.
Well, and also, are these
inspection.
procedures written in a rule book, or is it where is there
was a bulletin in
on this?
No, there's a bulletin in 2023, and none of the procedures are written in the rule book. This is just This is no processes either pre or post are written in any rule book.
But was the procedure itself outlined in this memo in a bulletin?
Yes, in a different way. It was actually a different way than it is now. It changed via verbally, I guess is the term that was used.
Okay.
And so it was unhook the front shocks and place the front end, and now it's you are allowed to set and measure the front end is what the difference is now.
Okay, but that is a common understanding.
Yes,
that's
common
not
understanding.
Written in a rule book. It wasn't in a bulletin.
No.
It's sort of you have to have gone through post-race inspection to know.
Exactly. Correct.
Got it.
So, or had to paid attention at post-race inspection over the last 2 years of other teams going through and seeing them do this. Right. So unfortunately, none of our guys knew the process. They did as instructed. This put the front end at over 6.5 inches in the front when you're allowed to be 5.5.
The structure a teeter-totter, right?
Yep.
You lift the front and the back comes down.
Exactly.
Which is why NASCAR is allowing the teams to set and measure, right?
Correct. Yep. So when it measured with the front that high up, of course, the rear was low by 1/8 in the left rear and 1/4 in the right rear. And to give you an idea of if that front end goes an inch lower via the lever, math of a lever, and just understanding amongst the teams of how this all works and the length of the truck and everything, you basically gain 1/2 inch in the rear. So 1 inch in the front, 1/2 inch in the rear, you would have been clear by more than 1/4 in the right rear and 1/2 inch in the left rear, just about. So unfortunately, our truck was not measured at that height. It was measured with the front end way higher, which of course meant it was illegal. And, from NASCAR's point of view, as it was measured, yes, it was illegal, 100%. They were correct in that. What we then when we dove deeper and understood what
but the
happened,
procedure wasn't used.
Yeah, well, we didn't get
as
to.
It was measured, it was illegal, but they did not use the right procedure, right?
And they're in the NASCAR officials' defense, this process has been around for 2 years. So no matter how they said it, they most likely expected and assumed we knew what to do. Right? That's just, I think, one of the biggest communication breakdown situations. Now, our team says they said one thing. NASCAR believes we did have the procedure described.
Wait, so there is a straight up he said, she said difference in words that were used.
Yep.
Like they could not. Are you saying that? And I don't know if this is breaking the rules of how deep you want to go in this, but you're saying that in the appeals, whatever, that there was not an agreement on the words that were used. The NASCAR claims that they said something different than what your team said that they heard.
Correct.
So in a he said, she said, obviously, we're going to lose that one.
Going to lose. In their defense, for NASCAR side, as they measured it, was the truck illegal? 100%. 100%. So, I get it. That part makes sense. Where we felt like there was opportunity to, to overturn the appeal was in that exact situation you described, which was, hey, we had never been through this. Our person of authority wasn't there. They, whether it was described correctly or not, we obviously didn't know the process. Otherwise, you would have just set the front end correctly. And to give you an example of not knowing the process, when they lifted it up onto the platform and then did the height sticks, one of our team members turned to the official and said, well, let's just push the front down like we do in pre-race. And they were like, no, you can't touch it now. And it was like, wait, what? So when you do, that last moment you measure it, that's final. So, that's where it was a communication error. It was a lack of knowledge on our part, of course, of how this happens or how this process is done. And therefore, that's why when I say, the truck was legal when it raced, yes, it absolutely was. It's just unfortunately, and it would have been easily legal having given the chance to set the front end correctly. Follow the procedure. We just, we did not follow the procedure.
You're saying that the procedure via unwritten rule, which is fine.
Yep.
Not every procedure can be, maybe they should be in writing, but not everyone is in writing. So via common knowledge, the procedure is to set and measure the front end before they roll up to height sticks.
Correct.
Did any of your team members measure the front end before rolling up the height sticks?
No.
So they did not set and measure.
They did not.
Which is the procedure to set and measure.
Correct.
So is it fair to say, and this is a little bit of what I tweeted, we'll never know if your truck was legal or not post-race?
I guess
we don't know.
Yeah, it's fair.
Right?
100%. Now, math would tell you otherwise. Just simple math.
Right, we can estimate,
math,
but we'll never know.
We'll never know. No.
We don't know if your truck was actually legal or not because they didn't use the procedure that NASCAR and the teams over the course of years and, in the truck series, they haven't changed a lot of rules, decades, have developed to say this is the right post-race procedure, that we need first the team to set and measure the height of the front.
Correct.
And then once the team sets and measures the height of the front to their acceptable heights, then we roll up and we measure the whole truck.
Yep. And in their defense, we are the first since February 2023 when this rule was created and put in place, this procedure, we are the first to fail heights through this procedure. Now, we also are
it's a pretty generous,
rare case, just to point some numbers to that. We are one of, I think I saw something that Tommy Joe Martins did where there's 12 part-time teams in NASCAR, and I believe we're the only one in the last, I think, almost decade that wins races. So we're the only ones who go through this sort of thing.
Right. That's where you can take some of the assumed procedures, these unwritten rules for granted when, these officials in NASCAR leadership is used to seeing the same 3 or 4 teams, organizations, week after week after week. They take their own procedures, and understandings for granted. And then you get a group, that you're not used to seeing, on top of the fact that the person of authority, their crew chief, is not even there.
Yep.
Right? Which is pretty rare for a crew chief to not be there to watch his vehicle go through inspection, is where you come up with this misunderstanding.
100%.
But the problem is it's not, I guess from my perspective, it's not just a simple misunderstanding. It's like throwing a case out in court, right? You didn't follow court proceedings. You didn't follow the procedure. So how do you, and I guess I even look at what the appeals, the ruling that was against you, so maybe we can go to that point, right? So they ruled that the penalty had to stay, right? The disqualification stayed. And the grounds that the appeals board, or they call it an appeals board or appeals committee.
Committee
the
board.
grounds that the appeals board has to base that off of is not beyond a shadow of a doubt. I know I tweeted, that it wasn't beyond a shadow of a doubt. That's not even the grounds for what the appeals board has to rule to. They have to rule to more likely than not that a rule was broken, right?
Correct.
So they have to basically, by majority, not even unanimous, say that more likely than not a rule was broken, therefore Parker is still DQ'd. And that's what they ruled. And even that I disagree with, because how do you know? If the procedure was not used, how do we know that his truck was legal? And you called me the night of, you and I talked till 10 o'clock at night over this, and you were like, my truck was legal. And I was like, well, hold on. We don't know that.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know if your
you're
truck
right.
was legal. They didn't measure it right.
Yep. So
is that more likely than not or not? I don't know.
I don't know. Well,
I think not. I'm biased. That's fine.
I appreciate your bias.
But I don't think that it's more likely than not that a rule was broken, because they did not measure the truck and follow the post-race procedures in measuring the truck. Now, where you were saying NASCAR's argument, and maybe this is where NASCAR wins this appeal, is on the he said, she said part of it. Because NASCAR basically presented an argument that said, that the procedure was instructed to the team, and the team, that's not what the team heard.
Yep.
So, we'll never know.
So
where's the trophy?
I don't know right now. I have the checkered flag. The one I planted in the ground, I still have. They'll never get back. So I don't mind saying it. I'm keeping that forever. It's mine. Possession's 3/4 the law or 9/10 the law. So I got it. But and I think to your point, that's where it's just, it's so weird. I made the joke. I thought the hardest part of winning a race was winning the race. This is the first time where the hardest part of winning the race for me was then trying to re-win the race. And you know how much time I spent on that appeal and worked with the team and witnesses and gathering info and data and math. And it was a all hands on deck effort over 3 or 4 days. We presented that argument the best of our ability. I do think we made some really good points. I do think there is things on both sides we learned. One, we as a race team obviously have learned a lot and have learned the level of preparation we need to have going forward for post-race tech. On NASCAR side, I think they learned some things. I think they would fully admit that there is, probably some better communication that can be done at the time of inspection. And there's also, maybe a chance to look at the idea of like, hey, shouldn't there be an authority figure there? Like that should just be, whether it's an engineer, car chief, crew chief, administration level person, shouldn't that be a rule to have a car going through tech? I think that would, cause a lot of any of these problems. Now, I say that, but it's not really a big problem for them, right? This is a very unique case, a definite outlier in having a part-time team that has one full-time employee win a race. It doesn't happen. Like we're the only ones. So, it's a definite outlier in their processes, their procedures, or even their thought process of how to conduct any of this, because it just doesn't happen. So I can see that for sure. And, for us, we just, we know now going forward, we've got to obviously be more up to date on all those things. And, it's disappointing. It was the biggest win in my life, biggest win of the Hendersons. We always have the memories. We know what it feels like to win there. And I do think, for us, we'll be better going forward. And I hope for NASCAR that there's, some things that obviously can be gleaned and learned from it. And next time, if there's ever the chance of this sort of thing happening again, I hope it doesn't. So, that's all I can say in terms of like moving it forward. I'm trying to move forward. I've definitely was stuck on it last week and over this weekend, but I've slowly but surely been able to move past. And